This is Orsi, official old guy at oldguytalkstome.com, a podcast dedicated to helping older guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love. It's for women too. Each week, I bring you a special guest to help you create that life that you imagine for yourself and those that you love. We talk anti-aging medicine, personal growth, relationships, and sex, vices, and other topics that many don't want to talk about but need to. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you have to be old. Also, if you want to know 3 ways to get laid more frequently without begging, go to oldguytalks.com and opt in. When you do, you're going to get my informative video on 3 simple things you can do to get laid more frequently without begging, so you don't have to turn in your man card. And ladies, you may want your man to know these things, because I think you'll like it too. Additionally, you'll be notified weekly when a new podcast episode is ready for you to consume. Periodically, I will share with you other stuff that will help you create that life that you want for yourself and those that are important to you. Don't want to miss anything? Be sure to subscribe, share, and review this podcast. This is Orsi, official old guy at oldguytalkstome.com, a podcast dedicated to helping older guys create kick-ass lives for themselves and those that they love. And for those of you listening, well, I'm enjoying a glass of wine. I'll be having several during this conversation I'm having with Todd White. He's the CEO of Dry Farms Wines, and he's been a serial entrepreneur since 17. And after 15 years in the wine business, his life is dedicated to educating and helping people like you and me make better choices about food, nutrition, and how they think about consuming alcohol. As the founder of Dry Farms, he is a writer, speaker, and a leader in the organic / natural wine movement, which we're going to get into that quite a bit. He has widely educated communities on conscious consumption. Todd is deeply passionate about bringing people together to share love and laughter through natural wine. He's a self-described biohacker who practices daily meditation, Wim Hof breathing, cold thermogenesis, and a ketogenic diet. He's also a frequent speaker on topics including ketogenic lifestyle, meditation, and Dry Farm Wine's unique company culture, which we're going to also get into. He gathers his team every morning for meditation and gratitude. His company has grown over 780% in the last 3 years, and he's endorsed by many U.S. performance leaders, including Dom DeAgostino, who's been on this podcast a couple of times. And he's also official wine sponsor for many of the leading performance conferences, sharing over 1,200 bottles each year. And such events like Paleo of, Joe Paulo's Genius Network Conference, Low Carb USA, and other meetings. Dry Farms is the world's premier natural lab-tested wine club. And we're going to be talking about that. So, Todd, welcome to Old Guy Talks.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It's going to be a great time.
I'm looking forward to it. And so I always have a question that I start off with. It's the same question on my podcast. And I'd be curious to hear what your answer is. What is the most important thing you've done today?
The most important thing I've done today is started my day with meditation with a small group. When we have interviews, we have a very long and extensive interview process that typically lasts about 2 months. But the final part of it is if the candidate makes it through, the 10 various exercises, projects, and steps to get here, the very final part is an in-person interview for 3 days here in Napa Valley where we live and work. And so the most important thing I've done today was a meditation this morning that I had with this candidate and half a dozen other people in the meditation room in my office.
And so you have a ritual that you go through every morning before you don't start your work until most people actually have been work, but you have a ritual that prepares you for the day. I'm a great believer in morning rituals. I have my own, and it takes me a few hours to get through every morning. So tell us about your ritual.
Well, I have a personal ritual. I get up sometime between 4:30 and 6 o'clock. I just wake up whenever I wake up. That kind of depends usually on how much wine I drank the night before. but I wake up sometime between 4:30 and 6 usually. And then I meditate for about 30 minutes. And then I have a gratitude and visualization practice. I take a cold shower, and then I go into the gym. And I usually spend about an hour and a half in the gym. And from there, I oftentimes or usually journal or review my sort of 30-year life plan. And then I catch up on the news, and by then it's normally time to start creating with my team. So then we meet at 10 o'clock, which is rather late. We've never started our work day or day of creation, as we would call it, until 10. And then from 10 to 11 in the morning, we meditate together and have other ritual practices that might include gratitude or journaling. There are a number of different visualizations and affirmations that we share together. Usually there's a meditation, quiet, concentrated meditation that lasts for about 15 minutes. Then there's a lesson led by someone, and the lesson lasts five minutes or so. A typical lesson might be something like why attachment leads to suffering, or how we can live a more aspirational life, or techniques for from lessons from the Stoics, or these are the kind of typical lessons or life lessons. Mm-hmm. And then we have practices, whether it be gratitude, where everyone goes around the circle and shares what they're grateful for that day, or could be journaling, or as I said, affirmations or visualization. So that lasts until about 11 a.m. And then at 11, we start creating, and then we stop between 5 and 6. So we actually have a work day that lasts about 6.5 hours or so. Mm-hmm. And even in spite of working less, which I believe is one of the keys to getting more done, is, we spend most of our, as you will appreciate, youth is wasted on the young, right? And so we spend most of our life in a hurry.
Right.
And that energy creates resistance to the abundance that will come naturally to us if we're open to receiving it. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's kind of how I start my day. And then, I try to minimize my participation in email, both reading it and sending it. I think email is one of the most destructive things to a peaceful life, right? And a life well lived. And so I try to minimize my time in email, and I spend most of my day now focused on culture cultivation, strategic direction, finance, and creative development. Fortunately, I have super talented people to do everything else for me that I don't like to do. Mm-hmm. So I think another key to a life well lived is understanding what you do well and what you love, and what you don't like and what you don't do well, and get other people to do that for you.
Yeah, I think it's very important to actually play to your strengths. So you alluded to this because you have a very unique culture in your company, and you alluded to this. How do you pick the employees? How do you pick, a little more detail about that? Because it sounds like a real a detailed and a process that you look to find the right fit, and a process also that will keep you from making a mistake that a lot of employers make, which is hiring and firing.
Well, I mean, turnover is the single most destructive thing to company culture. It's also very expensive, mm-hmm. and great people are hard to find. So we begin the process with identifying that hiring is the single most important thing that we do. There's not much you can't get done in the world if you surround yourself with the right people. And surrounding yourself with the wrong people will do just the opposite. It'll be a great gravity and weight to any progress that you can make. Mm-hmm. And so we have virtually no turnover. We begin the hiring process with an obligation from the applicant. And so we require, first of all, our job postings, which you can see online by going to dryfarmwines.com/family. And that's where our job postings are. Our job postings are 11 pages long.
Wow.
Now, only about a page of that has to do with the actual responsibilities of the position being posted. The rest of it speaks to our manifesto of peace and performance. It speaks to our culture and how we see the world. It speaks to our practices, including meditation and the other things that we believe in. And so it also includes a 15-question questionnaire. Most of the questions have nothing to do with business. The average candidate, good candidate, will spend between 6 and 8 hours completing the questionnaire. They're essay form answers. Now, the reason that's important is because we're looking for candidates who want to contribute, who want to express themselves, and who are doers. And what we want to do with the questionnaire and the 11-page posting is we want every single person possible to select themselves out of the process. So we don't want them to read the description and say, these people are fucking crazy, or I don't identify with it. We want you to select out. And then if you're not willing to invest the time to do a thoughtful job writing in response to this questionnaire, we want you to select out. Because it's been my experience that if you're not willing to put the work in on the front side, you're not likely to do much on the back side. And that the pre-sale, which is the interview, what they're doing, the interviewed candidate is selling us on hiring them, and we're selling them on coming to work for us, right? Mm-hmm. And so the pre-sale is always as good a sale as you're going to get, right? So if the pre-sale is not very, very strong, the follow-up after sale is not going to be very strong either.
Sure.
Right? And so we're looking for doers, and doers want to do, right? They're the person in the room who, and I work with 72 of them, right? And so they're the people in the room who can't help but to create and do. They don't mind writing because they enjoy creating, right? They don't mind answering the questionnaire. In fact, they want their views heard. They want to show that they have creative energy. They want to invest themselves. And so the doers, as we call them, they're the people, if you have them over for dinner, they're the people who are always offering to help, or more than offering to help, they're clearing the table for you, or they're policing dishes. These are doers. See, they'd rather be doing something than having small talk, right? Because they're more energized actually by doing something. That's the people we're looking for, the people who want to create, and the doers. So we want everybody else to select out without us hearing from them, right? Because I'm not interested in seeing a resume. I can get those all day long by putting a posting on LinkedIn, right? Mm-hmm. Where you've got people who just are resume machines. I don't want to see those people. I want to see people who believe enough in themselves to express their truth in these questions to us, right? I want to see emotional availability and vulnerability. And so it starts there before we'll even look at them. And even if you're a friend of mine, you go through the same process, right? Mm-hmm. No matter how you come in, you start this process. And then from there, we have a very quick 10-minute, what we call meet and greet video. With 10 minutes will tell us if there are any immediate red flags of connection between the two of us. Mm-hmm. Then following that, we have a 30-minute, more in-depth greeting that typically involves 5 or 6 people, the department head plus people in the hiring committee. If it goes past that, then you will be assigned to project work. And those are 2 projects that one is analytical and one is creative. And hundreds of candidates have done these projects. So we know what good project work looks like, right? And so once you do the project, then you'll have 45 minutes to present those two projects to, again, this hiring committee, which at this point is typically 8 people. And this is all being done via video now, and much of it would be done by video anyway. And then once they present these, if they make it past that, and most have fallen out by this point in the process, we only hire 4% of applicants.
That was going to be my question, was what percentage of people actually get hired?
And so now, fortunately, as we've gotten bigger and we've gotten better and our reach is longer and wider, we're attracting better candidates. We also have, bigger budget these days. So we can attract higher caliber talent. But anyway, so that's from there. From there now, we've had to change our process a little bit with COVID. From there, we then do an hour social call, what we call a happy hour, where we send the candidate wine. And if they are moving with a significant other, by the way, we interview them twice, the significant other. And the reason we do that, number one, who you choose to spend your life with tells me a lot about who you are. Number two, I want to see the energy of the two of them together. So we do this happy hour with them. Alcohol is involved. And there's a high level of engagement between us and the two of them. Now I want to see, how they get along. And you can read that energy pretty clearly.
Sure.
And number three, we want the significant other to understand how passionate and intense and serious we are about our life's mission and having fun. Because we consider, if we're not having fun, none of the rest of it really matters, right? And we're in the alcohol business, so we party a lot. And so we want the significant other to know who we are, right? And what they're stepping into, because it's not like getting a regular job. Our culture is not like that, where you go home at 5 and you shut your office door and you don't think any more about us or have any contact with us. We're all very intertwined in one another's lives. We see each other socially quite often. We travel together during normal times. We're starting to travel now with a lot of our COVID testing bills exceeded $20,000 last month. We do a lot of COVID testing.
Wow.
We have a whole protocol now for getting. So then we bring the candidate to Napa for 3 days. We started this again, but we bring them here. We quarantine them for a couple of days. We get them tested twice. We're all tested on a weekly basis. And we test every morning before we start meeting with these candidates. Of course, we've never had anybody be positive. It's just a precaution to bake as much certainty into the process as possible. It's very difficult, although we made about 30 hires last year, or 25 or so, I guess 25 or 30, where we didn't meet people at all and hired them remotely, and then they relocated later. So it's possible, but it's just, there's, having FaceTime and being in the same room and sharing consciousness and energy makes a big difference in evaluating the likelihood of the success of the relationship.
Yeah, the interaction in person is really key. It's so important in so many different ways in terms of actually really reading a person and understanding what drives them and who they are. You mentioned your manifesto, and that's a big part of your company culture. Can you talk a little bit more about that in more detail?
Well, there are 9 codes to it, but in premise, the 2 most important, well, there are many that are important, but they're all important. But I think the 2 that are most important, and this gets back to being doers. The most important thing in code 1 is self-directed responsibility. And so if you're a person who needs to be told what to do, we're not a good fit for you. We don't have a traditional management hierarchy that really accommodates for us to tell you what to do. So we're looking for people who are doers and direct themselves in a very conscious and high-minded way, because we have unlimited paid time off, we have unlimited expenses, we have very little oversight to anyone and don't want oversight, right? So there's a lot of autonomy and freedom. And the only way that really works is if an individual is self-directed in their expression of responsibility, right? So we're looking for people who are just inherently wired to be self-aware and who are interested in being more self-aware. And this helps guide their judgment and behavior.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, we have to stop our people from working too much, right? Because they're just people who like to create. And so self-directed responsibility is a tenet. The other is emotional availability and vulnerability and not being fearful of being seen. So we put love first. We believe that love will solve virtually all problems. And so we put friends first is another tenet. So we believe that now, again, this only works if you have the right people, right? You can't put love and friendship first if you don't have the right people, because you got to be breaking their back all the time to get them to do anything.
Well, that or some people are just naturally not a fit. I mean, some people are users and opportunists and don't
right.
give.
So our interview process quickly weeds those people out, right? Most of them won't even apply because it requires too much effort for them to come in.
Did you know that there are 76 additives that have been approved by the FDA that can be added to wines? You want a wine with shit in it that may not be good for you? Well, there is an option for wines that have been produced naturally, organically, that have been tested, that have no sugar. And when they don't have any sugar, that means that they're ketosis and intermittent fasting friendly. These wines have been produced with a great deal of care on small farms and are available to you. How do you get them? Find out by going to www.oldguytalks.com/dry farms, all one word with an S, and find out more. And with your initial order, you can get a bottle for 1 penny. That's right, a bottle for 1 penny. And they taste great. They taste great. Don't wait, don't hesitate, don't procrastinate. Get those wines now.
Come in. Mm-hmm. Again, they're self-selecting out. So, we believe that a peaceful environment is the single greatest contribution to our abundance. Drama creates resistance. Striving creates resistance, right? And we believe that when you put that resistance into the universe, that you're blocking the ability to attract your born-given abundance that all of us have the opportunity to access. Most people spend much of their life creating resistance that blocks this abundance. And that resistance comes in the way of self-doubt, that comes in the way of striving too hard to get ahead, that resistance comes in the way of anxiety, of the future, regrets of the past, anything that's tying up our ability to be creative and our ability to receive these frequencies. And so once we stop creating resistance, which comes from drama, right? Gossip is resistance. All these things create resistance in your life. This is our belief, and it's worked well for us, that when we have an open heart that's filled with love and we're emotionally available, we're willing to be seen and see other people. And again, I have to qualify this again, this only works with the right people.
Exactly.
Right? If not, you would get taken advantage of and run over, right? And so it's highly incumbent that you identify the right people. And we have sacrificed growth, although we've been one of the fastest growing private businesses in the United States. We don't apply to any of these contests, but when we compare ourselves to other people like on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies, we don't participate in any of that because that's not how we think. But when we compare our results to others, we'll be at the top of the list.
Sure.
And so, that's, so we kind of think that peace, you're old enough to know that, as am I, you're old enough to know that that the most important thing in life is living a life of peace. And once that peace is interrupted, then nothing else really matters until you can try to get it fixed, right? It's just like our health. We say that, a healthy man has 1,000 wishes, and an unhealthy man only has one wish, right? And so if a peaceful man has 1,000 ideas, an unpeaceful man has a single idea of trying to find a way to be more peaceful, if they have self-awareness. And some people are not self-aware, and therefore peace doesn't really register with them. They're just in constant chaos. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about people who have a sense of awareness. And look, I know this is kind of woo-woo, high-minded, kind of Zen talk, but I'm also a hedonist. Like, I love to party and I love pleasure, right? So you don't have to, I don't think you have to expense one. Yeah, I don't think it's a scale. I don't like to look at life as, people say, what about work-life balance? And I'm like, well, I don't believe in work-life balance, because a work-life balance means that one has to balance out at the expense of the other, right?
Yeah.
I like to view life as a circle. And
yeah, a lot of people are into that polar thinking. It's got to be, good or bad. They don't really understand that it's actually more of a sphere of opportunities than actually just two opposites that have to be, that they're just at different ends of the spectrum.
well, same thing for living a life of peace or party. It's like, well, how can you be mindful and like to party like a rock star? Well, because I do both, right? It's just that it doesn't have to be this or that. Just because I like to party and have outrageous amounts of fun doesn't mean that I'm not morally grounded, right? So I mean, but unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, youth is wasted on the young. It takes a while to figure all this out, right? And a lot of self-work, if you want. But again, everybody's got different goals, and I'm not really. You ask my opinion, I'm just giving my way of thought or my way of how I look at the world, but just that's not the only way to look at it. Everybody is different, and people have different points of view.
Yeah. Part of my philosophy is that, and I'm not definitely not successful on it every day, but I work to be a better person tomorrow than I am today. And that's in so many different areas, be it in my relationship with my wife, be it physically, be it spiritually, all those things. And I think once you stop that growing process, and this happens as you get older,
You die.
you deteriorate. Yeah, and for some people, it's a slow death. It's a slow, painful death. It's called living without purpose, and so it's you see unhappy people because they've got nothing to live for. When you had a major event in your 50s that essentially you were broke, and you said that I understand that changed the trajectory of your life. Tell us a little bit about that.
Wow, how'd you learn about that?
Oh, I did my research.
Oh, wow.
I did part of my research involves listening to other podcast interviews.
Well, I've done a few and talked about this many times. I had a very significant hero to zero event when I was 54. I'm now 60. And I had a business, A, I shouldn't have been in, B, in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing for the wrong reasons. And I had a business in the end of life care, senior health care. And I raised a bunch of money for it, and I invested a bunch of money in it. And I have started about 10 companies, and several have been pretty successful, and several have been okay, and several have been not so successful. But I've never experienced a catastrophic loss or a catastrophic business event that really sort of interrupted my life. So I did 6 years ago, and I determined after 3 years in investing about $10 million in it that the business, not quite 3 years, 2.5 years or so, but I was at a place where I was going to raise some more money, and I just couldn't get there. And so I shut the business down, laid off 40 people, gave them all severance, and everybody got paid up except for the investors and me. And there's about $500,000 left when it was all said and done. There was no bankruptcy or anything ugly like that. It was just like I came to the realization that this just wasn't going to work, and I was going to have to make this incredibly difficult decision to call these investors, some of them who were friends of mine, and say, I'm sorry, but you're going to lose your money, and I'm going to shut this business down, and this is over. And sometimes the things you say no to in life are way more important than the things you say yes to. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, I did that, or wouldn't be where I am today. But the result of that, is I also became unemployed. And I had basically put all of my money into the business. And so I went broke, worse than broke. I was about $200,000 in debt. Mm-hmm. And so that was it. And I went through a traumatic grieving experience that left me suicidal at times. And I took it way more personally than I should have, looking back. And, and also looking back on, if we look back on the life of an entrepreneur, if we look back on the life of anybody who's done anything significant in life, you're going to face some pretty tough battles. Mm-hmm. And I had faced some tough battles before, but nothing that seemed quite as catastrophic as this. And I was shamed. I had shamed myself into a state of stricken grief. I was paralyzed. I didn't work for about 6 months. I was really, really in a lost and very dark place. From that, I accidentally discovered meditation. And that's where things started to heal and change. Mm-hmm. And why meditation has been a cornerstone of my life since then. And I've introduced it to thousands or hundreds of thousands of other people through podcast and public speaking, and the power of silence. Mm-hmm. The power of a present mind, the power of a life of intention, and being able to live in a way that is gentle. And so one of my favorite quotes, and it's been attributed to everybody from Abraham Lincoln to Buddha, but it goes as follows. I heard it from Jack Kornfield, but it says, when a man looks back on a well-lived life, he's likely to find that 3 things were the most important: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you released the things that are not meant for you. And so meditation brought me to that practice of those 3 things and quieted my mind. And from that, I was able to start healing and start really a new life with a new perspective. So before, I'd always been kind of baller entrepreneur, striving, money, fear-based management, the typical entrepreneurial life, right? Mm-hmm. And then from meditation, I started practicing a life of appreciation, not expectation. Mm-hmm. Right. And so from that so yes, that event, while painful, was the most defining event of my life. And because I got very, very dark, right? I mean, our best redemptions and the phoenix rises from the ashes, right? It was a very, very tough time. But it seems like 10 lifetimes ago now. I mean, so much has happened that's been positive since then and the way that I process life today is so different that it's like there was a prior me and then there was the after me, right? That,
Yeah.
and you know, there's a lot of science around this when people get so far down this near suicide kind of programming that we actually get chemically rewired, right? And so anyway, that's what happened, and fortunately, I'm not broke anymore, which is good news.
It's really hard to feed your hedonism if you're broke.
Yeah, I'm the hedonistic monk.
Yeah,
and
yes.
so so it was you know, I've been very successful and I've been broke, and it's a little easier to be on this side of the coin.
Oh, without a doubt, we've all been there. We've all
Yeah.
been there. I remember a Christmas, and to this day I still won't get one, where I had wanted a camel hair sport coat, and I got one for Christmas as a Christmas present, and I had to return it to pay rent.
Yeah.
You know, that's you know.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there a couple of times. Never as
Yeah.
dramatic as the last time, but I'd been, you know.
Oh, sure.
I had been at times needing to be very resourceful several times as an entrepreneur and being near broke or without money, but never.
Yeah.
It wasn't the devastation. It wasn't being broke that was the problem, because I was clever enough to work around that. I had friends who helped me out. I borrowed some money from some friends. I wasn't down and out. I was never homeless or anything terrible like that. The worst part about it for me was the mental anguish and this feeling of guilt.
Sure.
You know, this grieving of what I had done to others, right? And which was all unnecessary and kind of ridiculous looking back on it. But, you know, it was this grieving process which was so damaging. It wasn't, you know, again, I found a way to sustain myself. It wasn't that. It was like, it's really this mental anguish, that the weight that you put on yourself that paralyzes you and holds you down like an anchor.
You know, in the darkness, if you can find your way out, there's a great life awaiting you if you have the ability and the fortitude and determination to find your way out. But out of the dark, it's only in the darkness that you really understand the value of a great life that you want to establish for yourself and those that are important to you.
Yeah, there's a great art quote: "All beauty is created through struggle."
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. If you like what you've heard and learned, then be sure to do 3 things. 1, subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. 2, share this with someone who may need to hear it also, and it may be your significant other. And 3, review it. Give me a good review. If you didn't like it, give me a bad review. I don't care. Just review me. And be sure to get my free video on 3 ways to get laid more frequently without begging. Opt in at oldguytalks.com. Don't be that guy that just takes in the information. Take action. Without action, you're not going to get the results you want.